all the teams, all the time. It's Pro Football Wire's nightly recap with John Lund. Make sure you follow us on social media at PFB Wire and subscribe. Like and turn on your alerts on YouTube at Pro Football Wire. Now with the latest news around the NFL, here's Johnny.
Yes, welcome in. It is Pro Football Wire at PFB Wire. All the teams, all the time. Monday Night Football recap time. And you can see right there, Bijan Robinson was the story of the first game as the Falcons beat the Bills 24-14. That's 2 losses in a row for the Bills. And like a lot of times, it's the teams that lost that we'll talk about versus the teams that won. The Bears pull one out in the battle of the 1 versus 2 quarterbacks in 2024. A late fumble by Washington and Jaden Daniels leads to a Jake Moody field goal. Jake Moody, the former third-round pick of the 49ers, who was just picked up a couple of weeks ago, was on the practice squad. Caleb Santos had some issues, and Jake Moody was thrust into action. He had 1 field goal block that was pretty low, but he hit 4 field goals tonight, and the Bears beat the Commanders 25-24. We have a lot to go over in Monday Night Football recap. Thanks for joining us. Before we get to everything plus anything and everything that's going on in the NFL, make sure that you are following us at PFB Wire, Pro Football Wire. So a lot of different ways you can do that on X. If you're watching at John Lund Radio tonight, thank you. But please just go over to at PFB Wire very quickly. Make sure that you're subscribed there as well on X, as well as YouTube. You may be watching on YouTube tonight at PFB Wire on YouTube. Love you to come over here as well and make sure that you are subscribed. Hit those alerts because not only do we do shows, but we put all sorts of information out and videos and all those kind of things. You don't want to miss anything. Instagram as well at PFB Wire and also on TikTok. So make sure that you're following us on all social media channels at PFB Wire. So as you can see on the right side, that's what we always do. We give you the game plan on the right side on the chalkboard there. Monday Night Football recap. Falcons over the Bills. We'll start there because that was an early game. The Bears beat the Commanders 25-24. Washington led that fumble, like I said, to the field goal. We'll get into all that. NFL stories, including Mike Tomlin with an interesting comment before the Steelers take on the Bengals, and he's got a point. Brian Branch suspended. I could not disagree with that more, and we'll replay that for you. And if you didn't see what happened, which led to Brian Branch doing that, we shall discuss. The NFL has just gotten incredibly soft. Puka Nacua day-to-day. You'll hear from Sean McVay. Brian Callahan, I give you every single week. The coach is on the hot seat. I think I had I didn't have Callahan 1. I think I had him 2. Because they had beaten Arizona, so I don't think he was the hottest seat. But he was the first coach fired today, and it's interesting where he may go. Get into that conversation as well. Plus, I have a little bit, I didn't put it up there, but Myles Garrett, something I think is interesting. Plus, tomorrow, this week, the kind of things we do at PFB Wire, we'll do that before we get out of here as well. So lots of videos, things to talk about, your thoughts as well. Put your comments right underneath the show. I'll answer all the comments, and if you hit us up as well on X, at John Lund Radio, at PFB Wire, those are good places to get me if you want to have comments there as well. All the teams, all the time, the new Pro Football Wire at PFB Wire. And make sure, as you said, right above my head there, that you subscribe to all of our social media channels. All right, let's start with the Falcons of the Bills, 24-14. It was all about Bijan Robinson just coming into his own. Everybody wants these players to be the best version of themselves right when they get into the league. And we knew Bijan Robinson at Texas could run it, could catch it, all the different things he could do. But I talked last night about a guy like Jackson Smith and Jigba in Seattle who's really starting to come into his own. And now Bijan Robinson might be the most complete back in the league. And this is funny to me because 2 years ago, who was it? It was Christian McCaffrey. The 49ers went to the Super Bowl. I'm not saying that's where the Falcons are going. Last year, it was Saquon Barkley. This year, it's Bijan Robinson. He's having the best year amongst those running backs. And it's not just the Derrick Henrys of the world, nothing against him, that are just running the football. It's what these running backs can do as runners and receivers. Now, don't get me wrong, 19 for 170, 238, though, total yards. We saw Rico Dowdle of Carolina, all pissed off at the Cowboys, put up that same number of total yards. But it's these mismatches that they make. So you take him out of the backfield. Is a safety going to pick him up? Is a linebacker going to pick him up? Most linebackers and safeties can't cover Bijan Robinson. So it gives Atlanta that matchup advantage on the field. And you start looking at Atlanta, and I know Kyle Pitts hasn't lived up to it, but he has capability. And all of a sudden you're looking at a guy like Drake London, who's just got the size, and Michael Penix has got to throw it up there. And look, I don't know what Atlanta is, and we'll get to that in just a second as we go later on in this breakdown of the game. But Bijan Robinson just gives the Falcons an unfair advantage. It reminds me of what Philly had with Saquon last year, reminds me of what the 49ers had 2 years ago with Christian McCaffrey, and still do, don't get me wrong. Those are still really good players. But Bijan Robinson, I think, has vaulted to the top of the running back field because he can just do everything. He's a great receiver. He's a great route runner. He's a great runner, and he gives Atlanta a matchup advantage on every single play. And again, I'm not a huge fantasy guy. I play one fantasy league with a bunch of old friends. We throw in a bunch of money, and we see how it goes. But Bijan Robinson is the best fantasy guy. I mean, he gets the touches. He's their offense. And he makes things a lot easier on Michael Penix Jr. So, again, he's the big story in the 24-14 win, 170 on the ground, 238 total. Atlanta is going to be something, and then we're going to get to the Bills. Their defense, 21.6 points per game coming in, which was 16th, so middle of the pack. They had 4 sacks of Josh Allen tonight, and the issue with Atlanta has always been about the defense. They got a good offensive line. They can always run the football. I mean, Tyler Algier is a good running back in and of himself. He could be a probably 1,200-yard rusher in this league if it wasn't for Bijan Robinson. So they have a great two-headed monster. They got a good offensive line. They've got enough as far as the receivers are concerned. I don't know what Michael Penix is going to be long-term. I know he started a little bit last year, but we really don't know what he is. But I know this. He can zip the ball, generally makes good decisions, watched him a ton at Washington. That doesn't mean he's going to be a great professional, but he outplayed Josh Allen tonight. And you see right there, I put Penix greater than Josh Allen. I don't mean that as an overall statement. I mean just tonight. Let's look at the numbers of the game tonight. As again, Atlanta wins 24-14. And remember, this is a team that got blown out by Carolina. And Carolina's not as bad as we thought, but you just don't know week to week. And now the Bills have lost 2 straight. And we'll lament the Bills. And I'd love to get your thoughts there. But again, Penix 20 of 32, 250. And a touchdown, did not make the mistakes. Josh Allen got sacked 4 times, threw 2 interceptions. Look, you know this, but I'm going to tell you again, you can look at turnovers in this league, and you don't even have to watch the game. And most of the time, whoever commits the least amount of turnovers wins. Look at the running game, 32 for 210 at 6.6 a carry. Now it helps that Robinson had that 81-yarder, but still, you get 32 carries for 210. Look at Buffalo. 26 throws for Allen, 24 runs. You don't want a 50-50 mix. You want to be able to dominate on the ground, out-physical the other team, and that's exactly what Atlanta did on the ground. And like I said, Drake London, not the fastest, but the biggest, very strong hands, can get up and get the football. 10 for 158 and a touchdown for him. He got targeted 16 times in the pass game. And the other, look at those targets, 8 for Bijan, 16 for Drake London. So if you look at Michael Penix, he threw the ball 32 times tonight. He targeted either Robinson or London 24 of his 32. Pitts only had 4, and then you can see from there. So, yeah, could they use another receiver? They could, but still, they've probably got enough in the way that Bijan Robinson plays and the way Penix believes in both London and Robinson. That's the way that they're getting it done right now. And then, like I said, defensively, the question is always going to be for Atlanta. Remember, they traded next year's first-round pick to get another pass rusher. They're desperate to try to get the defense going, are they? And again, you're talking about a guy like Raheem Morris, who's a good defensive coordinator. So if their defense comes around, they run the football the way that they do, I'm not saying they're going to beat Tampa in that division, but that's probably a playoff team in Atlanta, and I'm not sure what they are. In fact, I said this last night as we previewed Monday Night Football. I said, I don't know what Atlanta is. Same thing with Buffalo. Tomorrow we'll come out with the PFB Wire, the Pro Football Wire Super Bowl pick, as we do every single week, and it changes. And I told you after last week's loss to New England by Buffalo, I said I still believe in this team. But to go to Atlanta, and that's not typically one of the tougher places to play, and lose 24-14, they're just not getting it done right now. Josh Allen can only do so much. He's not getting a lot of help himself. He did not play a great game tonight. So Atlanta wins that game. And to just go down and Bijan Robinson, Atlanta's defense, Penix was better than Allen tonight. What are the Falcons in that division, and I'll give credit to Carolina at 3-3, and New Orleans is trying, and I don't mind Spencer Rattler, but they're not very good. I think Atlanta can, just based on winning those games. I think they'll beat Carolina at home. I think they'll obviously sweep the Saints, and then it's going to come down to Tampa versus Atlanta. Tampa looks really good right now. In fact, when we look again at what the playoff picture looks, and yes, we love looking at the playoff picture after 6 games. I get it. It's only a third of the season. But Atlanta's going to be in the mix if they can get something out of their defense. Now, as far as the Bills are concerned, and this is what we love to do, we love to lament the team that lost rather than give credit to the team that won. Atlanta won the football game. Let's get that straight. But the bigger story is here was a team that 2 weeks ago in Buffalo, especially with the Ravens being down and the Chiefs were down for a minute. We'll get into them. We talked a lot about them last night after the win over the Lions on Sunday Night Football. All of a sudden, it was like, wow, this AFC is kind of opening up for the Bills. And now they've lost 2 straight. In fact, New England, based on their win, and I know we're only through 6 games, but it is a third of the way through the season. I don't know if New England's going to be able to hang. But now at 4-2, both teams, with New England getting the win, New England's actually the top team in the AFC East at this very moment. Do I think Buffalo's going to bounce back? Yes. Do I think Buffalo's going to make a trade at the deadline to make themselves better? Yes. The problem with Buffalo to me is I like Keon Coleman. He's a nice player, but he's not a burner. He's a size guy. They've got a couple other guys. Shakur is okay. I like their tight ends, but do they have enough offensively? And more so, do they have enough defensively? They needed a stop late in that game. It was 21-14. Atlanta had the football. You go into the 4-minute drill, and Atlanta just ran it and ran it and ran it. And ran out enough of the clock, made it 24-14 that Buffalo didn't have a chance to get back into the game. They've got to make that stop right there if you're a team that thinks you're going to go to the Super Bowl and finally win it. The defense didn't step up. Josh Allen wasn't very good, and I'm not sure that the Bills have enough weapons. So give me your thoughts. 2 weeks ago it was easy path to the Super Bowl. Team struggling in the AFC after 2 losses, one at home to New England. And tonight against Atlanta, there are certainly and should be questions about the Bills and the AFC. And we'll get to the playoffs picture in just a second. Now, as far as the Commanders and the Bears are concerned, I watched the Bears and I watched Caleb Williams, and there's something missing. He gives me Kyler Murray vibes, just a lack of leadership and all these kind of things. But here's the difference. He's got so much talent that he can overcome it. Now, his eyes go down too fast in the pocket. He's too quick to leave the pocket. At both Oklahoma and USC, he was easily the best athlete on the field. So he has this tendency, and I get it because he got sacked a lot. The Bears fortified their offensive line in this offseason, but he has this tendency to leave the pocket quickly and try to make backyard plays, and he still does that in his second year. He's going to have to learn to win from the pocket, but he did enough tonight. His arm strength is elite. His ability to throw from different platforms, well, not Patrick Mahomes. He certainly can do that, but it just seems like he's always missing something. He's hanging his head sometimes. There's just this weird vibe that Caleb Williams gives out, but you got to give it up to him tonight. And Washington helped. 3 turnovers tonight for Washington led to 13 Bears points, and there's your ball game. They won by 1 point, and the Commanders gave the Bears 13 points, so they handed them the game. Does that matter? No, it doesn't. A win's a win, a loss is a loss, and I don't care how a team gets it, but Washington's going to be kicking themselves going, how did we lose that football game? So give it up to the Bears, give it up to Caleb Williams. He did enough to get them in a position to win the football game, and I'll pop those stats up in just a second, but as you can see right there, Washington turnovers under Commanders Bears equal 13 Chicago points, and the Washington fumble led to the game-winning field goal. Now, of course, and I talked about this late last night, after the Sunday night recap here on PFB Wire, the 2024 draft. Remember, number 1 was Caleb Williams. Number 2 was Jaden Daniels. And number 3 was Drake May. And my question to you is, how would you put them? Like, if you were a GM and you had the number 1 pick, you were the Bears last year, would you still take Caleb Williams? Probably has the most overall talent. Drake May is gaining fast. Jaden Daniels, and I said this before the season started. The way Washington was a year ahead, and I know Adam Peters, he's great. I know the way that Josh Harris is doing a really nice job trying to get the stench off of Washington of Daniel Snyder, and because of last year, they accomplished it. And they still have veterans like Zach Ertz, who caught a touchdown, and Bobby Wagner, who's not washed. and they brought in some new faces this year, and they brought in Deebo Samuel, who wasn't overly effective tonight. With the way he carries weight, the physical way that he plays, I don't know if he's going to last. Luke McCaffrey is starting to step up. I do wonder, especially without Terry McLaurin, how much longer he's going to be out. Will they have enough offensive weapons? What kind of move will they make at the deadline? So Washington's got some issues. They're one of those teams that you saw and they elevated so fast. And I like Jaden Daniels, but his slight build does scare me as far as injuries are concerned. Maybe flashbacks to RG3. I'm not saying that's what he is. He's a great leader, a very good quarterback, but he was anointed so fast. Washington was anointed so fast. I said at the beginning of the year, I thought Washington was a team that was going to come back down to earth. They're 3-3. They're fighting for a playoff spot. Are they better than that? I don't know, because they were a laughing stock forever. All of a sudden, they jump out and do what they did last year, and I like Jaden Daniels. I do. But, and are things different if Terry McLaurin's there? Yeah, but the thing is, like if you watch the 49ers and the Bucs yesterday, the Buccaneers were missing like their top 4 wide receivers. The 49ers had Fred Warner with an injury already, with Bosa and Purdy and all the injuries they have. That's the league. And that's where it's different from the other sports. It's not that when you're going to get injuries, or if you're going to get injuries, I should say. It's when you're going to get injuries and to who and for how long. It's a guarantee that it's going to happen. So when you're a fan and you say, well, if we would have had so-and-so, well, everybody's got that issue going on. Every single team. Now, some to an extent that it affects their season, like the 49ers, like the Buccaneers, who are still 5-1, on down the line, like Baltimore. The reason they're 1-5, a lot of it's Lamar Jackson, but they've got a lot of defensive players out. Detroit lost last night to Kansas City. Their whole secondary was out. Seattle's doing a masterful job, and Mike McDonald, they've got Devin Witherspoon, Julian Love, and Tariq Woolen out yesterday against Jacksonville. They still win. So certain teams can overcome it, whether it be scheme, backup players, coaching, whatever the case may be. Everybody's hurt. So if Washington tonight's saying, well, geez, if we had McLaurin, they generally have pretty good health on Washington, especially versus other teams. This to me, and I know Jaden Daniels missed a game, but this to me is, I'm not sure how good Washington was last year. Believe me, they deserve everything they played with last year. They played great. I like Jaden Daniels, and I'm not saying they're going to go back to the depths that they were. I just thought that this was a team that was going to be a touch overrated, and maybe they would fall back down to earth. And tonight was kind of that example. Too many turnovers, too many mistakes. I don't know that the Bears are great, but they did enough. And again, 13 points given to the Bears by Washington. So let's take a look at the box score tonight as we take a look back at a double Monday nighter, which, by the way, I absolutely positively love, but I've told you that a million times. I love the 6 a.m. start on Sunday. I love the doubleheader on Monday night. We get another one next week, which before we get out of here tonight, we'll preview. But again, good numbers for Caleb Williams because he didn't commit a turnover. 17-29, 252 and a touchdown. Jaden Daniels threw an interception, but again, 3 touchdown passes for him. It wasn't him. Ran the ball enough, and I'd look more at how many times did you run it. They ran it 31 times. That's a winning number, but the turnovers tell the story. That's the bottom line. Nothing else really jumps out. Bobby Wagner does what Bobby Wagner does. But then you look right here. You look at the fumbles. There's a fumble. There's the fumble that cost him the game. So two fumbles right there that cost him, and an interception by Jaden Daniels. You turn the ball over more than the other team, I don't even care. You're going to lose the football game like 80% of the time. That's the number in the league. So let's take a big picture look at both teams. Let me share the screen one more time and take a look at this, because I know you love this, because this is why we're looking at this. Because what are each of these teams? I asked you about what is Buffalo now. I don't think they're the best team in the AFC. They can prove me wrong. We're 6 games in. We're just talking about right now. Atlanta, to me, is an intriguing team. They're not going to win the South, but they're going to be a playoff team that maybe some teams don't want to play because Bijan Robinson is that good and that big of a difference maker. Now let's look at the playoff picture and determine what exactly Washington and what exactly Chicago is, because Chicago plays in such a tough division that all that's well and good. But look at this. They've already got the playoff. Isn't this awesome that the playoff picture is already up? So let's just start in the AFC because it's right there. Colts, I don't know. The top 3 teams in the AFC, actually top 4 teams. I don't know if I believe in Daniel Jones. I don't believe in the Steelers. I just think they play in a really bad division. And then they've got Cleveland next week. The Chargers, they just had Cleveland. The Chargers just beat Miami, but they were on a losing streak. The Patriots are just kind of coming back out of their shell, but I do like Drake May. And now here are the Bills, just based on the fact that the Patriots beat them, all of a sudden you're a 5 seed. The Jags, I think, showed what they're about as they lose at home to Seattle. I don't have any confidence in that offense, and Trevor Lawrence hasn't turned the corner. To me, if you want to look at the AFC, the Bills, the Broncos, like the Broncos sitting at 7 right now, that's my sleeper out of the AFC, and then the Chiefs right here. So really, to me, the teams that are going to be there at the end for the AFC, the Bills, the Broncos, and the Chiefs. That's what I think right now. The Texans are kind of climbing out of their hole. They play at home against Seattle next week. That's going to be a good game. We don't have to worry about any of the teams down here. So that's what the AFC looks like. Now, the NFC, just because we were just talking about what the NFC is, the Buccaneers, to me, are for real. The Packers, to me, are for real. The 49ers have so many injuries, I don't even think they're going to win their own division, and I question whether they're going to be in the playoffs, although they have an extremely easy schedule. The Eagles absolutely are legit. They got some issues. I don't know what's going on with A.J. Brown and all that kind of stuff, but they've got the most talent in the NFC. Seattle is very much a sleeper team when they get, if they get, their secondary back healthy. Darnold to Smith and Jigba right now might be the best combination in the league. The Lions, the Lions' loss to me is kind of like what Buffalo's loss was last week. I'm not concerned. The Chiefs are starting to play some really good football. Their defense was better. That was a more desperate game for them to win. Everybody had been heaping all the accolades on the Lions. You don't want to see the Lions in the playoffs. Rams are interesting to me. They have some kicking issues there, and we'll see on Puka Nacua. I'll play that for you a little bit later. We got into the Falcons, and then here are the Bears sitting there. The problem with the Bears is they play in probably the best division in football. The Lions, the Packers, the Vikings, if J.J. McCarthy could get it together, which I'm not sure that he can. But those are all good teams in the NFC. The Panthers, you got to give them credit for being 3-3, maybe the biggest surprise in the NFC. I thought they might go winless. And then there are the Commanders, and they just seem like they don't quite have the it that they had a year ago. Dallas is Dallas. You don't have to worry about any of these other teams. The Giants, kind of fun to talk about, and last week was pretty cool when they beat Philly. Cardinals are on a 4-game losing streak, blah, blah, blah. So if I was looking, I told you about the AFC, who I like in the AFC. Buccaneers, I got to give legit credit to. See, and then this is the difference. Buccaneers, Packers, there's a lot of teams in the NFC. Eagles, Seahawks, Lions, Rams. I can see all those teams doing something. The Bears are a bit of a sleeper. I just don't think they're ready this year, and I don't know exactly what the Falcons are. So give me your thoughts on Week 6. That is through Week 6 now as we have the Monday Night Football games. And again, if you're just joining us here on Pro Football Wire, we are doing the post game for the Falcons' 24-14 win over the Bills and the Bears' 25-24 win over the Commanders. And by the way, so we went into the Washington turnovers. We talked about the 2024 draft. The Bears, by the way, one thing I wanted to say, and I wasn't sure if the Bears were going to win this game. They get the fumble, they come back, Jake Moody kicks the field goal, which I'll get into in a second. But if Caleb Williams doesn't succeed, there's a lot of organizations that you look at the quarterback and you look at the organization and who drafted a quarterback maybe too early, and you said, well, they didn't surround the guy. Well, they went out and spent a ton on the offensive line, so they can't say anything about that. DeAndre Swift is always underrated. He was with the Lions and the Eagles, and he played great tonight. So they've got enough in the running game. Luther Burden, they spent a high pick on. More they got. A couple of tight ends that are solid. I mean, look, they have surrounded Caleb Williams with plenty to be a successful quarterback. You can't, if and when he doesn't succeed, they bring in Ben Johnson, a big-time offensive mind from the Lions. They've done everything to say to Caleb Williams, you've got to be great. Now, he's good. He's prone to lapses. Like I said, I don't like when his eyes go down. I don't like when he leaves the pocket early, all those kind of things. I think he's got to manipulate the pocket a little bit more and win from the pocket more. But we'll see, because I think they've surrounded him, and they've done a nice enough job to surround him with enough talent, both on the offensive line and with weapons. Jake Moody, finally, 4 field goals. Give the kid credit. If you don't know, I was in San Francisco for about 15 years. And when they drafted Jake Moody, the 49ers, I was in the draft room right next to the 49ers draft room. We did draft coverage from there forever. And I screamed on the air, no, when they took him. I just don't like taking kickers that early. You can get them from everywhere. Look at Brandon Aubrey and look just all over the league. Eddie Pinheiro, the kicker for the 49ers, who hasn't missed, was just sitting on the street. You don't have to use a third-round pick. Having said that, and all the criticism that I've given Jake Moody in his tenure with the 49ers, I felt great for the kid. He kicked one that was low that was blocked, but he kicked 4 field goals, and his heart had to be racing a million miles a minute. It was a 38-yard field goal. They're down 24-22, 3 seconds left in the game. He joined the team just a few weeks ago on the practice squad. Santos, their normal kicker, is out, and you hardly know any of these guys in the locker room. In fact, Caleb Williams after the game said, I didn't even hardly know the guy, but I saw him kick a 65-yarder in practice, and I knew he could kick. So most of these guys don't even know your name. Kickers are strange anyway. Kyle Shanahan wasn't exactly supportive. In fact, when he came in to do the interview after they had drafted, they come in after every pick. He goes, I wanted a running back. So he wasn't fond of it. And look, his viewpoint on kickers is make the kick. I don't know how to talk to kickers. I don't really care. I just want to make the kick. I mean, he got frustrated at the end of his tenure, but I feel good for the kid. When you take the pressure off, and this is why I don't like taking kickers early, when you take that pressure off of being that high pick, they can go somewhere else and they can relax without the expectations. And I think he's going to have a long career in this league. I just thought it wasn't going to be destined with the 49ers. And there's been a number of guys. Chad Ryland, who's now with the Cardinals, drafted in the 4th round that same year by the Patriots, didn't work out. There's a number of kickers throughout the years and years and years who just didn't live up to their pick. Sebastian Janikowski being the only first-round pick. But a lot of times they just put so much pressure on themselves. How do I know that, not being a kicker? We would call Joe Nedney, a former 49ers kicker, after every time Jake Moody screwed up, and he would be waiting for the call, and he would tell me these things. So I'm not saying it. I'm just regurgitating it. But I've talked to enough guys and been in the league and covered the league long enough to know that that's just a lot of pressure on a kid, and he didn't really respond to it well. And tonight I feel good for the kid because he got the 4 field goals, including the game winner. And again, the Bears win 25-24. Any questions on Monday Night Football? Hit them right underneath here at PFB Wire, and make sure you're following us on all social media channels. So X, I'm at John Lund Radio, and you might be watching tonight on John Lund Radio right now on X. Make sure that you flip over to at PFB Wire and follow us there as well. News, videos, breaking news, opinions, lists, all sorts of things that you want for your football experience at PFB Wire on X, Instagram, TikTok, and of course, live right now on YouTube at PFB Wire, Pro Football Wire, all the teams, all the time. So make sure that you're following along to stay up on the latest in the NFL. So from the games tonight, and by the way, just real quick, and we're going to go on and we'll give you the preview for next week. Before we go to stories in the NFL, 6 a.m. start to now 2 Monday Night Football games. Let's do this every single week. Thank you very much. All right, the stories of the NFL. First and foremost, the Bengals and the Steelers get together. And, when Joe Flacco got traded to the Bengals, and it's not that I didn't think much of Joe Flacco when he was with the Ravens and there was all that whole ridiculous, is he elite? Is Joe Flacco elite? Well, I covered that Super Bowl, Baltimore versus the 49ers, and he wasn't just a carrier of it. He wasn't Trent Dilfer winning a Super Bowl while the defense did everything for the Ravens, something like that. Joe Flacco was a main reason why the Ravens won that Super Bowl. So Joe Flacco has been a good quarterback in this league. Is he a Hall of Famer? No. But is he a solid quarterback that he can win with? He was. But the Browns at the beginning of the season decided, okay, we're going to start the guy and we'll see with these other guys. Now they have Dylan Gabriel, and they trade him within the division to the Bengals. And Mike Tomlin, in his Monday press conference, was not a big fan of that.
It was shocking to me. Andrew Berry must be a lot smarter than me or us, because it doesn't make sense to me to trade a quarterback that you think enough of to make your opening day starter to a division opponent that's hurting in that area. But that's just my personal feelings.
You don't hear that much, but he makes a hell of a point, which is, I think it was a pick swap too. In fact, I know it was a pick swap. It was Flacco and a 6 going to the Bengals, and the Bengals sent back to the Browns a 5th. So for a pick swap, essentially, for a pick swap, you gave the Bengals a starting quarterback. And Mike Tomlin brings up a hell of a point. Now, maybe you didn't want to pay Flacco, whatever the case may be, or you're just the Browns being the Browns, but why would you help out the Bengals? And he brings up a point where he says, you thought enough of Joe Flacco that he was your opening day quarterback. Now, their quarterback situation's a joke, and how they've handled it is a joke, and what the Browns have done through the history in drafting quarterbacks is a joke. We all know that. They're the worst talent, the worst QB evaluation team in the history, maybe of the game. I mean, when was the last really good quarterback? Bernie Kosar, before that, Brian Sipe. I mean, a lot of you are running to your football databases as I say those names. I mean, you remember Brandon Weeden and Johnny Manziel and Tim Couch and on, Brady Quinn. And I mean, all these different things that they did in the first round, just atrocious. And next year, if they're a top 5 team in the NFL draft, and I think they're going to be, then they're going to do the same thing. They're going to be drafting a quarterback, even though they took Dylan Gabriel in the 3rd, even though they took Shedeur Sanders in the 5th, even though they had, I mean, it's just, and by the way, they're still paying Deshaun Watson. They've got the highest paid quarterback room in the league, and yet they have 5 quarterbacks and they have none. But anyway, it was a hell of a point by Mike Tomlin. And not only do you kind of think to yourself, yeah, that's a good point that nobody brought up. But the other part of it is you don't usually hear a coach say that, especially before he plays a game. And look, as much as I think Flacco is certainly just a pure backup at this point in his career, he's better than Jake Browning. And he threw 2 touchdown passes against Green Bay last week and hardly had any time to study the playbook. So that's not so bad. So Mike Tomlin brings up a good point. By the way, speaking of Cleveland, and I don't have this on my board, but because we're speaking of Cleveland, I don't feel bad for Myles Garrett. Now, not only because he makes $40 million a year, not only because he got $88 million guaranteed. Remember when he sent out the letter and he said he wanted to be traded? Remember this? With that in mind, he said, blah, blah, blah. With that in mind, I've requested to be traded from the Cleveland Browns, which who wouldn't want to be traded from the Cleveland Browns? And the Browns went, hey, man, you don't really want to be traded. We'll make you the highest paid edge rusher. And he went, oh. So this was him at the Super Bowl last year, Myles Garrett.
How we'll be remembered and what we want to accomplish. And it's never been about money for me or trying to drive up a bigger contract or anything like that.
Oh, yeah, really? Because that's why you stayed. You put out that letter. You said you wanted to be traded. You told them you wanted to be traded. And then they offered you $40 million a year as the highest paid edge rusher, which he should be. I think he's the best one. I'm not saying he shouldn't have done it. And he got $88 million guaranteed. That's hard to turn down. But this was Myles Garrett after another pathetic offensive performance on Sunday by the Browns.
Yeah, that's frustrating. We'll lose the same way every time. It's frustrating as hell.
Problem is that now, if you look at his dead cap number, it's $129 million. And the year after that, it's $78 million. And the year after that, it's $28 million. So maybe Myles Garrett in a couple of years could get traded, but he shouldn't. He just should have stuck to his guns. Do you want to win? He mentioned Lawrence Taylor I remember Lawrence Taylor as a winner, and we all remember Lawrence Taylor, certain things, but if you were around in those days, the Niners versus the Giants and the Redskins versus the Giants and the Bears versus the Giants and all those groups of teams that were so good, and that's what he's talking about, the winning legacy. And the bottom line is, look, Cleveland ain't too far from Canton. He's going to Canton. It's just he's not going to be known as a winner. He took the money. You could say he sold out. Now, you wouldn't be right in that because he took $88 million guaranteed and he took $40 million a year to lose with the Cleveland Browns. I can't blame him for that. But then don't turn around and be all frustrated with the offense because you knew what they were going to do in the offseason. You know what the Browns are. They're a complete joke. And there's Myles Garrett, who I don't feel sorry for because you can drown yourself in your money. All right, we've talked too much about the Cleveland Browns. There's Mike Tomlin's comments. Brian Branch. Let me play this for you last night. This is a combination of Brian Branch, and then you can also see the fight. Put them both in the same screen if you missed this last night, and then I will explain. But Brian Branch now, today, has been suspended for 1 game for fighting after the Chiefs-Lions game. This is, you'll see the fight, and you'll hear Brian Branch after the game.
Like, they were trying to bully me out there. Should have never did it. It was childish.
What happened between the play? What are you referring to?
I got blocked in the back illegally, and it was running the ref. The ref didn't do anything, and just stuff like that. And I could have got hurt off of that, but I still shouldn't have done that. So
that was at the end of the game. You're talking about somebody hit you in the back. Juju hit you in the back.
Yes.
So Juju in particular was the one that hit you? Or,
yes.
Yeah. Were there other things that they were doing just in terms of maybe rubbing it in at the end?
Yeah, they were. There was a lot of stuff, but I should have showed it between the whistle. not at the game, and I apologize for that.
What sort of discipline, if any, do you expect from the league, or you got to hope?
What a dumbass question by the end, by the way.
Honestly.
What kind of discipline do you expect? Well, he gets a game suspension. I don't agree with it. I understand the hits in the head. I understand cleaning up the game. I understand protecting the quarterback. If you don't, I don't know what to tell you, especially when it comes to the quarterback. They're the stars of the movie. I don't want to match up with Jake Browning. I don't even want to. I don't want Joe Flacco. I don't even want Mac Jones. I mean, I want the starting quarterbacks. I want the leading men out there. I understand keeping the game safe. A couple of things that bother you, though. This whole thing about sportsmanship, like Cam Scatterboot last week when he ran off the sideline after getting knocked, and he basically turned to an Eagles player and said, "You ain't doing it. Doesn't matter. You can hit me out of bounds, whatever." Just a quick thing like that. Hey, man, that's competitiveness. You know, I think that's stupid. I think they need to not do that. I think it's a point of emphasis. I talked to Mike Pereira before the season on my show, and Mike said that was going to be a point of emphasis. He was 100% right. That part I don't like. Look, Brian Branch took accountability for it. Now, if you saw Dan Campbell after the game, Dan Campbell basically read him the riot act and said, we don't do that. I get it. If you did not see what Juju Smith-Schuster did, it was a dirty hit. It was basically a blind hit in the back, and you can't go after the game and do that. I understand that, but I don't think you should suspend Brian Branch for a game because of it if you're the NFL. If this is not on Sunday Night Football, if this is not gaining all the media attention that it did, he wouldn't have got suspended. We are a reactionary society. The NFL is reactionary. If a guy gets hit big time, even if it's a legal hit, they're going to throw a flag. They just don't like the look of certain things. And after that game, Roger Goodell, Sunday Night Football, the amount of media coverage it got, the amount of social media coverage it got Brian Branch suspended. That's what I think. If it's a lesser game, if it's not as high profile, if it's not Chiefs and Lions, if it's not Sunday Night Football, Brian Branch doesn't get suspended. He was remorseful. It's fine. It's not going to happen again. I understand it. The league does not want to see that. Officials are already off the field, so there's nobody really policing anything in that situation. I get it. It can be dangerous. There was a pileup, blah, 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 blah. And you know what? You can't have justice like that. You can't go out and do those kind of things. But the kid understands that, and you're going to lose him for an entire game, a really important piece of the Lions. I'm not saying this because I'm a Lions fan. I just think it's too much. I think that the league goes too far in certain ways, and I think they're being reactionary in this way. I don't think that this matches the crime of a one-game suspension. Tell me if I'm wrong. Hit me up on the comments underneath. So that is the Brian Branch situation. Injury-wise, Fred Warner, we talked about that ad nauseum last night. He's out, which that's why when I looked at the playoff standings, and I know that the 49ers are 4-2, but I think either the Rams or the Seahawks are going to win that NFC West. I just think that's too many injuries. And if you don't know about the 49ers, Fred Warner is just the heart and the soul of the 49ers. And can they overcome Nick Bosa? It's not easy, but you could have gone out and gotten Trey Hendrickson and been kind of close. There's nobody like Fred Warner. So that was the biggest injury yesterday. But you saw Puka Nacua go out, actually be carried off the field a little bit by trainers, actually come back. Here's the latest today. What's going to go on with Puka Nacua? Will he play next week? Here's Sean McVay today.
As far as injuries are concerned from yesterday, Puka has a little bit of an ankle sprain. We'll be day-to-day with him. Initially felt pretty good today, but we'll just see how the week progresses.
Knowing Puka Nacua, and again, doctors have much more of a say nowadays. Let me get you off the stage there, Sean McVay. Doctors have a lot more say in fact, they have the final say in things. It didn't used to be that way. Coaches could bully doctors, get them on the field. There was a book written years and years ago that I highly recommend. The doctor, and his name is slipping my mind right now, of the Raiders, wrote about the piece. It's not like that anymore. The doctors have the final say on things, but Puka Nacua is a tough guy. I expect that Puka Nacua will play this week for the Rams as they beat the Ravens last week 17-3. So I think he is going to play. There's a huge difference when he doesn't, but I do think he's going to play. So Puka Nacua is day-to-day. And then finally, as we said, the first firing of the year, Brian Callahan in Tennessee. You could have seen that 2 weeks ago. I had him at the top of my hot seat rankings. Last week, I had him number 2 in the hot seat rankings, and he gets fired by Tennessee. Now, remember, the reason I had him number 2 is because they actually beat the Cardinals, came back from a 21-6 deficit on the road in Arizona. Weird plays, remember, in that Arizona game, the interception that ended up being a touchdown, fumbled into the into the end zone. Just Mercado with the flip of the ball before the 1 yard line, which came out to a touchback. All those weird things, and they win 22-21. So he got a week stay, but they look terrible against the Raiders. They lose that game, and he gets fired. Mike McCoy, former Utah quarterback, Mike McCoy, who used to be the head coach of the Chargers for a few years from 13 to 16, he's going to be the interim head coach. He's not a threat to be the long-term head coach. Bottom line with Tennessee is, I don't know what Cam Ward is going to be, and it's certainly unfair to judge Cam Ward at this point of his career. But I'll just say this. I live on the West Coast. I watch an insane amount of college football. I watch an insane amount of football just generally. Covered it for many, many years. I like Cam Ward. But in the time he was at Washington State, he wasn't even considered a top quarterback. Played at Washington State, was really solid, never, oh my God, this guy's going to be a high pick in the draft. Goes to Miami, high-profile school, has got a lot of talent around him, plays really well last year. There's no doubt about it. But 1 year at Miami, and all of a sudden he's the number 1 overall pick of the draft. And when he rocketed up there and everyone was saying he was the no-brainer number 1, I was like, this doesn't make sense to me. I saw him at Washington State, really solid player, and I thought, maybe he's a mid-round quarterback. And he just hasn't been very good. Now, to his defense, they have a decent offensive line. But as far as weapons are concerned, they're completely lacking. And Calvin Ridley yesterday got hurt, so they don't have a whole lot. But they've invested in the offensive line, but they don't have a whole lot as far as weapons are concerned. And then just overall talent. I mean, Simmons defensively, they got a few guys defensively, but not great. Not horrible defensively, but not great. But offensively, they are lacking in a major way in weapons. I get that. So it's not Cam Ward's fault. I'm not saying it is. I'm just simply saying, and nobody can handle it by themselves. I don't care who you are. You're not going to be able to carry a team as a quarterback by yourself. It's just not going to happen that way. And Cam Ward's not ready to do it. And most guys that come into this league, as I said, look at Baker Mayfield and Sam Darnold and Mac Jones and all these guys who have been resurrected, is because the mental side is what's really important. The game has slowed down for those guys. And Cam Ward's just basically been thrown in there like many quarterbacks before him. And the guys that I just mentioned were complete busts because they were asked to save really bad football teams. And so this is on the Titans. And if you haven't paid attention to the Titans, and I don't blame you if you haven't, unless you're a fan, they've fired just about every front office and head coach position since 2022 a couple of times over. So they have zero continuity in the front office. The kind of players that they maybe want, I have no idea. They had Mike Vrabel. I mean, what blows my mind about this league is Mike Vrabel's a very good head coach. And just because a head coach goes through a couple of years in which things aren't exactly great, I don't think is a reason to fire your coach. I mean, I started this segment of the NFL with Mike Tomlin. The Steelers, good, bad, or indifferent, are like, Mike Tomlin's our coach. You don't even have to ask us about it. Continuity is important. Yeah, we had an off year. It happens, whether it be injuries or ineffectiveness or whatever the case may be. You're going to have an off year now and then. It doesn't mean you should fire your guy. Now, Brian Callahan, I get it. He doesn't have any equity built up. He doesn't have anything built up in the closet. I understand why the Titans did what they did, but Mike McCoy's not going to be the answer. So it's not really Brian Callahan's fault. It's the front office's fault. They fired 3 GMs in the last 3 years. They're on their 3rd GM, I should say, in the last 3 years. What kind of players do they even want? What are they trying to build? Are they trying to be tough guys? Do they want to run the football? They want to throw the football? They want to be tough on defense? Do they want to build their lines? What exactly is a Tennessee Titan player? Because if you don't have any continuity, you just don't know, and you're constantly changing players, and you can never get the roster you want because you're changing it too often. So it's not Cam Ward's fault. I'm simply saying that I watched him a lot at Washington State before he became a Miami Hurricane, and never in a million years did I think he was going to be the number 1 overall pick in the draft. We shall see. Now, here's an interesting thing, though. You know how Pete Carroll and Chip Kelly aren't getting along so well? And Chip Kelly's bounced around, and he was once a genius at Oregon. And he was okay when he first came to Philly, but then they caught on. And I covered the year that he was in San Francisco, and it was atrocious. And I'm shocked that he's back in the league as an offensive play caller. But Brian Callahan, maybe he's not a great head coach, or maybe he was just in a bad situation, but he'll resurface as an offensive coordinator somewhere because he got a good head coaching job because he was such a good offensive coordinator. This was asked because they lost to the Raiders this week. This was asked, and of course his dad, Bill Callahan, is a legendary offensive line coach, and he's going to be leaving the Titans. Bill Callahan coached the Raiders in a Super Bowl against John Gruden. Didn't turn out very well, but was a great offensive line coach for the Raiders for years. Could Brian Callahan go from Tennessee to the Raiders? Sounds like it.
Well, lots changed, but what goes through your mind, I guess, when you see the Raiders logo, considering your past and your dad's past?
Yeah, we got a lot of Raiders on our staff. A lot of guys that have spent a lot of time there. I've always, I was in high school when my dad was there. They had a lot of success over those years, and those were kind of my first. I was a fan. I was a fan of the team, and I was always excited to go. It was great environments to go play in when they were at the Coliseum in Oakland. Then I got a chance to go coach there.
All right, blah, 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 blah. You get the idea. He's got ties to the Raiders. Thing about Mark Davis, it's really interesting, and I know that Tom Branning's running the operations with the Raiders, but the thing that's interesting is, and this happens with every sport, it's all about connections and who you know. And Mark Davis is comfortable with guys that he knows. He knows Bill Callahan, which means he knows Brian Callahan. And with the Raiders having issues offensively, just stick a pin in this whole thing. I could see Brian Callahan being an offensive assistant with the Raiders, and then all of a sudden Chip Kelly being gone. Chip Kelly just doesn't fit Pete Carroll and what Pete Carroll wants to do. Chip Kelly's not an NFL offensive coordinator. He was at Ohio State. He was the head coach at UCLA. Didn't like the NIL stuff and all that kind of thing. Then he goes to Ohio State, and then he gets back into the league in the NFL. I just don't think he's going to last. Pete Carroll wants 3 yards in a cloud of dust. That's what he wants. They're already at odds in what they're doing. And again, that's a situation where they don't have a good enough offensive line. It's not Ashton Genty's fault for all these people like a dumbass like Ryan Clark, who's trying to say that Ashton Genty doesn't have it. Bijan Robinson wasn't the player that he was tonight in his first year. You got to get that offensive line. Atlanta said, okay, we take Bijan Robinson. Let's get a bunch of good offensive linemen. Let's make sure we're going to punch people in the mouth. It takes a minute. It's going to take a minute for Tennessee. It's going to take a minute for the Raiders. I don't know if Pete Carroll is going to be able to last that long at his age, but it takes a minute to get the right pieces in place. So again, Brian Callahan out in Tennessee. I have no issue with it. Mike McCoy is going to be the interim. That's not going to be the long-term answer. But Brian Callahan, I could see being the offensive coordinator of the Raiders sooner rather than later. So that was an interesting thing that I saw as well. This week, remember to tune in to PFB Wire and Pro Football Wire. We get a full week for you. So tomorrow, for example, after the week, we do our weekly Super Bowl pick. We'll do MVP. We'll do power rankings that everybody loves. We'll get some hot seat lists out there as well. We got shows that we'll be doing all week long, and make sure that you're subscribed to all the channels on social media, whether they be Instagram, TikTok, X at PFB Wire, or watch the shows right here on YouTube. Make sure if you're watching on X at John Lund Radio tonight that you come over to YouTube and subscribe to PFB Wire, because we put out a ton of shorts, videos, news, all sorts of stuff. Put a lot of stuff on X at PFB Wire, so make sure that you're following so you can get all the alerts and all the news on all the NFL teams. Finally, let's look at a quick look. We're not going to do this extensively because it's only Monday night, but let's take a quick look at the schedule for next week. Week 7 we are already at, so let's do that right there. Pittsburgh at Cincinnati is your Thursday. That's why Mike Tomlin, as I played before, is pissed. He's like, why do I have to go up against Joe Flacco? I'd like to go up against Jake Browning. The hell's Andrew Berry doing, the president of football operations for the Browns, trading them Joe Flacco? That's why he was pissed. The early game again, plus 2 Monday night football games. So Jacksonville, the kings of Europe, the Rams at Jacksonville. That's why maybe Puka's questionable, because you got to make that long travel, and I've done that. I've covered games in London. It is a long ass trip. So Puka's questionable for LA at Jacksonville. That's a huge game for the Jags, because if they lose another one and go 4-3, then it's same old Jags. And a big one for the Rams. They've got to keep pace with the 49ers, and more so, I think, the Seahawks. Chicago, New Orleans at Chicago. Is Chicago going to be fat and happy? Miami and Cleveland, the high pick bowl in that one. New England at Tennessee. Will Tennessee get a bit of a jump having a new head coach? Vegas at Kansas City. That probably won't end well for the Raiders. Philly at Minnesota. That has the potential. This is another one. Could the Jets? I don't think the Jets are an 0 for team. Will the Jets get coming off all of their controversy of last week? Possibly get their first win against Carolina. Carolina's a 1.5 point favorite in that. The Giants probably get rocketed back down to earth as Denver is my sleeper team in the AFC. Really good game. Indianapolis goes to LA to take on Harbaugh in the Chargers. Chargers are 1.5 point favorite in that game. I'll continue to ask if Indy is real, if they could go across and go down to LA and win that game. That would go a big ways towards that. Washington at Dallas. That's a huge game for Washington. As I said, I thought they would be a team that would drop off this year. Washington, if they lose at Dallas, and Washington's a 2.5 point favorite in that one. Green Bay at Arizona. That's not a good time for Arizona. They've lost 4 straight, probably going to be 5. Atlanta, San Francisco is the Sunday night game, and that could be really intriguing because the Niners, with all their injuries, and we just saw what Atlanta did early in the season, you're thinking to yourself, that's going to be a Niners win. But Sunday night, surprisingly to me, the 49ers are a 3.5 point favorite in that one, even with their injuries. And then 2 really good games for Monday night. And again, I'll tell you again and again and again, love the 6 a.m. start, 6 a.m. Pacific start, all the way through a doubleheader on Monday night. Tampa at Detroit. Detroit's a 4.5 point favorite. I wouldn't put anything past Baker Mayfield at this point. That's going to be a good game. And then Houston at Seattle. Houston early in the year was kind of looking like they were dead in the water. Seattle doesn't win at home. If you're a bettor, that's an interesting one because they're a 3.5 point favorite. Seattle's won 9 straight on the road, but they don't win at home, which is a place that they never used to lose during the days of Russell Wilson and Richard Sherman and that defense that they had and Pete Carroll. You couldn't beat them there, but now they don't win there. Buffalo and Baltimore for the bye weeks, and there is a quick look, and we'll do this later on in the week, but there is a quick look. We are already at week 7. Any games intriguing you? Tell me. Hit me with the comments right underneath here at John Lund Radio on X, at PFB Wire on X. What games intrigue you for the week? There's a couple of games that will have draft implications. There's a couple of games to me in the NFC, Atlanta, San Francisco, Seattle hosting the Texans. That Sunday night, the Monday night of the previous one with the Bucks and the Lions. That could be an NFC Championship preview game. So a lot of good games for week 7 in the National Football League. Tell me what ones are intriguing you. And remember, you don't have to agree with everything I say here. I'd love it to get your thoughts. Mike Tomlin, Branch suspended, Puka day-to-day, Myles Garrett taking the money, Callahan fired. Tomorrow we'll have the Super Bowl pick, so look for a short on that and any other breaking news. And again, Commanders lose a fumble, 13 points they gave the Bears off turnovers. Bears win 25-24 tonight. What are the Bears? What are the Commanders? You tell me. And then the Falcons beat the Bills 24-14. I'll probably have to take the Bills finally off my Super Bowl list, at least for the week. They've lost 2 straight, and that was a game I think they should have won. But you know what? Bijan Robinson's becoming the best running back in the league and certainly in the most versatile. And that's saying something when you got guys like Christian McCaffrey and Saquon Barkley, but 19 for 170 on the ground, 238 total yards. And they beat the Bills 24-14. Anything that I missed, anything you want to talk about, anything you want to hit me up about, hit me up right underneath here on the comments or again on X at John Lund Radio. And that's maybe how you're watching tonight. If you would be so kind as to go over to X and hit me up at PFB Wire. All the teams, all the time, all the NFL news you need to know, all the videos, all the breaking news, all that stuff, all in one place at PFB Wire on X, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, all those places. Make sure that you're following. Make sure if you're over here on YouTube, hit us with a like before we get out of here tonight as well. That would be absolutely great. I thank you for that. Make sure you subscribe to the channel and make sure you get those alerts on so you get those videos that we send out. We do send them out to all the social media channels, but we always post them here first on YouTube at PFB Wire. So if you want to get those videos first that we're producing, and we always send out a number of them throughout every single day because there's always breaking NFL news, make sure that you subscribe to the YouTube channel at PFB Wire. I think that's it. Chalkboard says that's it. We've gone over everything. Monday Night Football recap. And again, Falcons over the Bills, 24-14. Commanders lose to the Bears because of turnovers, 25-24. We'll talk to you tomorrow. Be looking for the Super Bowl matchup video that'll come out shortly. tomorrow, and we'll get you caught up on everything else tomorrow. Breaking news. It's all right here from PFB Wire, Pro Football Wire, at PFB Wire. All the teams, all the time. Have a great night.